There was a time when I thought Olivia Hale would be in my life forever. I met her in 7th grade, the kind of year when you still believe the world revolves around secrets whispered at lockers and matching bracelets that mean best friends forever. She was the loud one, the girl who could turn detention into a comedy show, who made teachers sigh and everyone else laugh. I was quiet, careful, always watching, never daring. Somehow she noticed me. From the first day, Olivia pulled me into her orbit. She was reckless but magnetic, always saying what I was too afraid to. We shared lunches, inside jokes, and the certainty that no one could ever understand us the way we understood each other. By high school, we were a pair that people mentioned together, Liv and Tessa. We talked about getting an apartment together after graduation, maybe starting a small business, her wild ideas balanced by my sense of logic. It sounded perfect, but life didn't follow our script. I got into a college across the state, while Olivia dropped out before finishing senior year. We promised to keep in touch, and for a while we did. Late-night calls, endless memes, the occasional visit when I was home. But the world moved faster than she did. By my mid-20s, I had a steady job, my own small house, and a long list of things I thought I'd finally done right. Then my health fell apart. A sudden autoimmune condition took away my ability to walk unaided. Doctors told me it could improve, but for now, the wheelchair was permanent. It felt like the world had slammed a door I didn't even know existed. Every part of my life changed, how I showered, cooked, moved, existed. During that dark stretch, Olivia appeared again like sunlight through fog. She came to visit with a bouquet of wildflowers and a grin that hadn't aged a day. "You think a little bad luck can keep me away," she said. I almost cried right there. She called every day after that, told me I was strong, that she'd help however I needed. For the first time since my diagnosis, I felt like I wasn't alone. So when she mentioned that she and her boyfriend were looking for a place to stay for a few months, I didn't hesitate. "Of course," I said, heart full of trust. "My home is your home." If I'd known what was coming, I would have locked that door and never opened it again. Olivia moved in on a bright afternoon in early March. Her boyfriend, Mason, carried boxes that smelled faintly of cigarettes and gasoline. They laughed the entire time, like we were recreating our high school sleepovers. I made tea, set up their room, and told myself it would all work out fine. The first week was easy enough. They cooked dinner twice, helped with groceries, even fixed a leaky faucet. It almost felt like family again. But small fractures appeared in the days that followed, hairline cracks that widened faster than I could patch them. It started with my one rule. "Please, no big dogs," I'd said before they moved in. "I can't risk getting knocked over." Olivia nodded. "Of course. I'd never do that to you." 3 weeks later, I came home from a doctor's appointment to find a brown pit bull tearing through the hallway. "Meet Luna," Olivia squealed as the dog lunged toward me, paws scraping my chair. I froze. "Liv," I said carefully, "this isn't safe." She rolled her eyes. "She's a baby, Tess. Relax." That night I didn't sleep. I heard the dog barking and running across the floors, and every sound felt like a warning. The next morning I rolled out to the backyard to get some air and stopped cold. My wheelchair cushion was soaked through, dripping foul-smelling liquid. Luna had peed all over it. The smell hit me like a slap. That chair wasn't just metal and wheels, it was my legs, my freedom. I yelled for Olivia. She appeared at the door, rubbing her eyes. "Damn, seriously? Sorry, I'll clean it later." But she didn't. I spent the next hour outside hosing it down myself, trembling with anger and humiliation. She stood at the door, coffee mug in hand, watching. Not helping, not caring. That was the day I stopped calling her my friend. From there, things fell apart like a slow avalanche. Trash piled up in corners, dishes crusted in the sink. Luna chewed the edges of furniture and left muddy paw prints across the floor. I'd crawl from my chair to clean because no one else would. One night I left a note on the fridge. "Please take out the trash before the house starts to rot." The next morning, Olivia slammed the fridge door and stormed into my room. "What's your problem? You don't have to talk to me like I'm your maid." "Then stop living like a guest who doesn't care," I snapped back. We didn't talk for 3 days after that. Mason avoided eye contact. Luna kept barking. The house, once full of laughter, began to feel like a cage. Summer crept in heavy and airless. The house smelled like old food and dog fur no matter how much air freshener I sprayed. Olivia and Mason were up late every night, laughing, drinking, blasting music. I tried to stay polite, but every "can you please keep it down" turned into an argument. Then Mason lost his job. After that, every bill somehow became my responsibility. "We'll pay you back next week," they'd say in perfect harmony. But the weeks blurred, and the excuses multiplied. The electric company started sending warnings. My bank account bled. I kept the receipts like evidence in a trial no one would attend. The tension grew unbearable. Sometimes Olivia would swing between being sweet and venomous within minutes. One night, while I tried to study, she walked into my room uninvited. "You're different now," she said softly. I glanced up. "I'm just tired." "No," she murmured. "You think you're better than me because you have your little job and your fancy degree." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I'd known her since we were 12. I'd never once felt superior. But in her eyes, my stability was an insult. Weeks later, her mother showed up with 2 duffel bags. "Just staying for a few days," Olivia said. Those few days turned into 4 months. Her mother treated me like a stranger in my own home, taking over the kitchen, smoking near my medications, even scolding me for not being grateful enough. I felt invisible, trapped inside walls I once loved. The day everything broke was a Thursday. I told Olivia calmly that I was moving out. "I'll be taking my bed and a few things," I added. She froze. "Wait, what? My mom's been sleeping on that bed. Where's she supposed to go?" I stared at her, disbelief choking my words. "That's my bed, Liv, my house. Your mom doesn't pay rent." Her face twisted into something I barely recognized. "You're unbelievable," she spat. Her mother must have heard because suddenly she was in the hallway, her voice rising. "Ungrateful brat," she shouted. Before I could react, her hand flew across my face. The impact knocked me sideways out of my chair. Pain exploded through my skull as I hit the floor. I tried to crawl away, but she came at me again, screaming, nails raking my skin, fists pounding. "Stop," I gasped, trying to shield myself. "Mom, stop," Olivia yelled, but her voice wasn't fear, it was panic. "You'll go to jail for hitting a disabled person." That was her concern, not my safety, not my pain. Jail. When Olivia finally pulled her mother back, I dragged myself to my room and locked the door. My hands shook as I dialed 911. I remember the sound of sirens, sharp, distant, almost unreal. When they took her mother away, Olivia stood in the corner crying, mascara streaking down her face. I should have felt pity. I didn't. At the hospital, Olivia came again. "Please, Tess," she whispered. "Don't press charges. She didn't mean it." And I, still stupidly clinging to the ghost of our friendship, said nothing. When I came home from the hospital, the house looked nothing like mine. Dirty dishes towered in the sink, a sour smell hung in the air, and Luna's toys were scattered across every floor. Olivia tried to act like nothing had happened. "I cleaned up while you were gone," she said brightly. There was a bandage on her hand, a bruise on her cheek, souvenirs from that night. I looked at her and felt nothing. No hate, no sorrow. Just the heavy, hollow calm that comes after too much noise. The next morning I called a locksmith. When he arrived, Olivia watched from the hallway, her eyes wide. "What are you doing?" "Changing the locks," I said simply. "You can't do that. We live here." "No," I replied. "You stayed here. There's a difference." For a second, I saw the old Liv, the girl who used to braid my hair before school, who once carried my books when my wheelchair broke. Then her face hardened. "You'll regret this," she hissed, and slammed her door. By evening, she and Mason were gone. They left behind piles of trash, a few broken picture frames, and the smell of wet dog. For the first time in months, the house was quiet. But the silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt haunted. At night, I kept hearing faint thuds from the other rooms, like someone walking where no one should be. I'd tell myself it was just Luna's leftover mess or the house settling. But the noises never stopped. Once I found muddy footprints leading from the back door to the kitchen. Another time, my wheelchair moved an inch overnight. Maybe it was paranoia. Or maybe it was what Olivia left behind, the echo of her chaos, the ghost of her betrayal. One evening I sat in the living room with the lights off, watching the last bit of sunset fade through the blinds. The quiet pressed against me, thick and alive. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Miss me?" I stared at it until my eyes blurred. Then another message came. "I left something for you in the basement." My stomach dropped. The basement. Olivia hadn't gone down there in months. It was where I kept my father's old tools, my childhood things, the boxes labeled private. My hands trembled as I wheeled toward the basement door. The knob was sticky, the air colder than it should have been. When I turned on the light, the bulb flickered weakly, throwing shadows across the concrete floor. There was something sitting in the middle of the room. A box. On top, a note written in Olivia's looping handwriting. "So, you'll never forget me." I didn't open it. Not that night. Maybe not ever. I just rolled back upstairs, locked every door, and sat in the dark until the sun came up. Weeks have passed since then. The house is cleaner, lighter. I got new locks, new curtains, new silence. But sometimes when the air is still, I swear I can hear faint laughter coming from the basement. And sometimes, in the reflection of the living room window, I see two shadows instead of one. Maybe it's just me. Or maybe some ghosts don't die when you kick them out. Maybe they wait for you to look back. I never paid much attention to my office building. It was a glass tower in downtown Charlotte, fancy looking from the outside, sterile inside. The carpet always smelled faintly of burnt coffee, and the air conditioning hummed so loud it drowned out your thoughts. Everyone microwaved leftovers, mostly spaghetti or instant noodles, and the constant clatter of keyboards formed a dull background rhythm. I'm Lila Carter, 26, customer support associate. My life was ordinary, paychecks, health insurance, and a routine I didn't mind. I'd grown up 2 hours away in a small town where everybody knew your business before you even opened your mouth. Moving to Charlotte gave me anonymity, but it also made me a little lonely. At work, I didn't have close friends. I was friendly with the marketing team, sometimes shared lunch with coworkers, but mostly kept to myself. The only person I could count on was Ethan Drake, a quiet IT guy who occasionally gave me rides home. Not friends exactly, just carpool buddies. Ethan was always in a gray hoodie, hair a little long, eyes glued to his phone, never saying much. That suited me fine after long workdays. Then the note appeared. It was a Wednesday. I sat at my desk, sipping weak gas station coffee, booted my computer, and noticed a folded piece of white printer paper tucked beneath my keyboard. 4 words, written neatly in blue pen. "You are truly stunning." No name, no doodles, nothing. I laughed at first, mostly because it felt absurd. Who leaves notes like that anymore? I muttered to myself, "Okay, secret admirer," and smiled faintly. The gesture was sweet, awkward, and utterly random. Later, I climbed into Ethan's old sedan for our usual ride home. "You won't believe this," I said. He glanced at me, not moving his eyes from the road. "What?" "Someone left a note. 4 words. You are truly stunning." Ethan didn't laugh. His jaw tightened, hands gripping the wheel. "Did you report it?" "Report what?" "You should tell HR," he said flatly. "Was it you?" I nudged, half joking. He didn't answer. Silence stretched the ride into an uneasy tension. I shrugged it off. Ethan was always serious, but something in his eyes made me uneasy. The following week felt heavier than usual. The note, which I had laughed off at first, now lingered in my mind like a shadow. Every glance at my keyboard made my stomach tighten. And then, during the morning meeting, Mr. Hayes, my manager, called me into a small conference room. Inside, Ms. Cole from HR was already waiting, her posture too formal, hands folded neatly on the table. "Lila," Mr. Hayes began carefully, "we need to ask if Ethan Drake has ever made you feel uncomfortable." Shock hit me. Ethan? No, he was quiet, harmless, even awkward at times. "No," I said, shaking my head. He's fine. Nothing inappropriate." Ms. Cole leaned forward, eyes sharp. "We're not asking you to accuse anyone. Just tell us if anything unusual has happened, anything at all." My stomach twisted. "Why? What happened?" They exchanged a glance I didn't like. "We can't share details right now, but if anything suspicious occurs, you must notify us immediately. Do you understand?" I nodded, uneasy. Something was wrong. That evening, Nina Lopez from accounting messaged me on Teams. "Did Hayes call you about Ethan?" "Yeah. Why?" I typed back. Her typing bubbles flickered nervously before the reply appeared. "He used to give me rides too. Then he started showing up at my gym, at yoga, even outside my apartment. My neighbor saw him parked for hours." I froze. My hands were clammy. "Please tell me you're joking. I wish I were." The following Monday, I returned to the office with a sense of dread. The conference room was packed, 20 of us around laptops and coffee cups. Ethan sat across from me, expression unreadable. Mr. Hayes asked him to share a client report for the team. Ethan plugged in his USB, clicked a file, and the screen filled with a video. At first, I didn't understand. Faces appeared, Nina and Ethan. Not real, but disturbingly realistic, grotesque, AI generated. The video made the room go silent, everyone frozen. 5 seconds felt like an eternity. Mr. Hayes yanked the cord from the projector. Security stormed in minutes later, pulling Ethan out. We signed forms in silence. "Isolated incident," HR said. "Confidentiality. No discussion." But it wasn't isolated. A few days later, I got an anonymous email. No subject. One sentence. "You laughed. Now see how much fun it really is." An attachment. I didn't open it, but legal did. Faces went pale. "It's you," whispered a colleague. I realized then that this wasn't over. The following week, everything changed. Even small things felt threatening. Every time I walked into the office, I noticed subtle signs. A chair slightly moved, a mug that wasn't where I left it, emails that vanished or appeared suddenly. My own workspace, once familiar, now felt like a maze designed to unsettle me. I tried to keep my routine, arriving early, leaving late, avoiding Ethan whenever possible. But the tension was everywhere. My phone buzzed at odd hours, messages from unknown numbers with only emojis, no words. On my lunch break, I avoided the gym. Every step outside my apartment made me glance at parked cars, shadows, strangers walking too slowly or too deliberately. Then it escalated. One Monday morning, the team gathered in the main conference room. Ethan was back, though HR claimed he was under review. I kept my eyes down, but the air was thick with tension. Mr. Hayes asked him to present the latest client data. Ethan's fingers hovered over the keyboard. A folder opened accidentally, or maybe not, and the screen flickered. My heart stopped. There, again, was a video, more vivid and horrifying than before. AI-generated images of Nina and Ethan, grotesque, violent, hyper-realistic. Colleagues gasped, some turned pale, others whispered frantic questions. My own pulse thundered in my ears. Security rushed in, yanking Ethan from his seat. This time, HR didn't even try to hide their urgency. Legal forms were handed to us immediately. "Do not discuss. Confidential." They warned us again. But I knew. It wasn't over. That evening, an anonymous email landed in my inbox. No subject. One line. You think it's done? Watch closely now. The attachment was corrupted. I didn't open it, but fear had already set in. Someone knew where I lived. Someone was watching. My paranoia grew. Shadows on my walls at home made me jump. Every parked car outside my apartment set my pulse racing. Sleep became impossible. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant sound felt like someone watching, studying me. I started checking windows, double-locking doors, even installing extra lights. But the feeling persisted. Someone, somewhere, knew my routine, my habits, my movements. Even HR avoided eye contact. Ethan has disappeared, they said vaguely. Police refused to comment. The ambiguity was worse than certainty. My life had been invaded, and I had no idea where it would end. By the weekend, I barely left my apartment. Laptops, emails, phones, all triggers for anxiety. I started noticing shadows on my screens, slight flickers and reflections. Something watching, always watching. The night Ethan disappeared, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, staring at my laptop, its black screen reflecting my exhausted face. For a while, the silence was comforting, until the reflection behind me moved. My blood froze. I turned sharply. Nothing. Empty apartment. Still, the reflection had shifted a second later than I did. That was the breaking point. I packed a bag before dawn and left the city. My phone stayed off. I deleted all social media, wiped my drives, and rented a small place in a quiet coastal town under a different name. For days, I convinced myself I was safe. But safety is an illusion that dissolves once you've seen what I have. The first strange thing happened 3 nights later. My new landlord knocked, saying someone had left a delivery for me. No return address, just a small flash drive inside an envelope. I almost threw it away, but curiosity won. I plugged it in. One file. No title. It opened to grainy footage of my new apartment recorded from the outside window. The timestamp? That same morning. My hands shook so badly the drive slipped and clattered to the floor. When I looked back up, the screen changed. Now it showed a live feed. My room, my face, me staring at the monitor. I slammed the laptop shut and yanked the power cord out, heart hammering. I called the police, but the local officer dismissed it as a prank. Probably some hacker tracking your IP, he said, half smiling. I didn't bother explaining that Ethan used to say the same thing when we joked about surveillance. The next day, a news article trended online. Former IT employee found dead in motel room. The photo was grainy, but the outline was unmistakable. Ethan. The report claimed it was suicide, but the note they found was a string of code and one chilling phrase. She's still watching. I didn't finish reading. I left town that same evening. I've changed places twice since then, but it doesn't matter. Every time I switch on a device, a faint static hum fills the air. Every time I glance at a dark screen, I see a reflection that hesitates a heartbeat too long before following me. Last night I received another email from an address I didn't recognize. No text, no attachments, just a single emoji. Maybe it's paranoia, maybe it's guilt, or maybe Ethan wasn't the one behind it after all. Maybe he was the first victim. And if you're reading this and you happen to see your reflection lag behind you tonight, don't stare too long. I never imagined my 20s would turn into a slow unraveling. My name is Kara Benson, and at 21 my life felt like a maze with no exit. I had dropped out of college after 1 semester. Tuition swallowed every dime, and my journalism dreams crumbled before they even started. Instead, I worked nights at a diner on the edge of town, a place that smelled of burnt bacon and stale coffee, where regulars left nickels and dimes as if mocking me. My apartment wasn't much better, a cramped box on Elm Street with peeling paint, a radiator that groaned like a dying beast, and neighbors who screamed at all hours. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that I'd save money, go back to school, and leave Ohio behind. Then came the Facebook message. Samantha Hayes. My chest tightened at the name. Samantha had been my closest friend from middle school through most of high school. We shared secrets, clothes, and impossible dreams about leaving our small town behind. But senior year changed everything. She got involved with a new crowd, skipping classes, sneaking out to drink and party, tearing me down in subtle ways that left me questioning myself. Seeing her name after 4 years ignited nostalgia, curiosity, and a deep unease. Against my better judgment, I clicked going for the reunion she suggested. The bar that Friday night reeked of cheap beer and perfume, crowded with older versions of familiar faces. Samantha spotted me immediately, her dark hair catching the dim lights, and her smile, sharp and knowing, sent a shiver down my spine. "Kara," she called, eyes wide, hugging me just a second too long. Conversation flowed naturally, though her presence was magnetic, almost overwhelming. She spoke of part-time work at a boutique, freelancing, and a rental she shared with 2 others. Her laugh was intoxicating, and I felt drawn back into a past I had tried to bury. By the night's end, she asked if we could hang out again. I agreed, unaware that this simple yes would be the start of a spiral I'd spend the next few years trying to escape. Her charm masked something darker, something I would only recognize too late. After the reunion, Samantha started appearing in my life like a shadow I couldn't shake. At first it felt harmless. Coffee runs, drives through quiet streets, late-night conversations where we laughed about the past. But soon, her requests began. "Can you drive me across town just for a minute?" she asked one night. I agreed without thinking. When we reached the rundown neighborhood she pointed to, she handed me a small duffel bag and whispered, "Don't ask. Just drive." My stomach nodded, but I obeyed. That night I learned quickly that helping Samantha wasn't simple. It came with rules I couldn't see. Days turned into weeks. She borrowed cash for rent, groceries, bills. I told myself I was just helping a friend, but every favor carried an invisible weight, a subtle reminder that I owed her. Once I noticed her bag bulging with envelopes full of cash and strange receipts. I asked nothing, but she gave me a small, cold smile. "Some people owe me," she said. "You could help me. Be my partner in it." I refused, telling her I couldn't be involved, but she didn't seem concerned. Instead, she showered me with kindness, dinners, gas money, small gifts when I was short on rent. Each act was a tether pulling me closer. I began to feel trapped, dependent, yet unable to cut ties. Her presence grew more insistent. She called at odd hours, arrived unannounced, and hinted at secrets too dangerous to speak of aloud. She made me delete messages, check my surroundings, stay alert. And still, I couldn't step away. Part of me wanted her approval. Part of me feared what would happen if I refused. I was no longer just her old friend. I was her tool, her confidant, her accomplice in ways I didn't fully understand. Every favor drew me deeper. Every smile tightened the invisible chains around my life. Samantha wasn't asking. I realized with dread she was taking and I was letting her. 3 months into our renewed friendship, the strain became unbearable. Samantha showed up at my apartment one rainy night, drenched, her eyes wide and panicked. "Can I stay?" she asked, voice trembling. I hesitated, but her presence was magnetic. I let her in. She collapsed on my couch like she owned the space, the weight of her body and her demands suffocating me. At 2 a.m, I awoke to hear her whispering into her phone. "She doesn't know. I'll handle it." My pulse spiked. Her words were cryptic, almost threatening. When she noticed me standing in the doorway, she smiled, warm, but terrifying. "You're my alibi, Kara. You've always been reliable. People trust you. I need that." From that night on, my life felt like a cage. She dictated when she'd arrive, how she'd use my car, and even subtly controlled my social interactions. Every attempt to pull away was met with a smile and a quiet reminder. "Don't make me regret trusting you." I tried to reclaim my autonomy. I told her I couldn't drive her anymore. I avoided her calls. Yet the guilt she instilled held me hostage. I covered your rent last month, Kara. I bought your groceries. You owe me, she whispered the next time I confronted her. Her words were sharp, cutting through my defenses. Even simple things, my apartment, my kitchen, my bed, felt invaded. She lingered, observing, calculating, making small comments that chipped away at my confidence. Nights were worst. I'd hear her car idling outside, lights flickering, as if she were testing my resolve. By the 4th month, it was clear. Samantha wasn't my friend. She had ensnared me, manipulated me, and now controlled the rhythm of my life. I was no longer a person making choices. I was a character in her story, moving exactly how she wanted. The final straw came one evening when she cornered me at my job, her grip on my wrist firm, eyes blazing. "You're not ignoring me," she said. "You can't. You won't." I realized then, with crushing clarity, that leaving her meant more than ending a friendship. It meant escaping a predator who thrived on control. I knew I had to leave before Samantha tightened her grip completely. I spent nights planning, checking my savings, and finding a new apartment across town. Each phone call, each text from her, felt like a trap. She always knew more than she should. She had a way of watching, predicting, and appearing exactly when I thought I was free. The day I moved out, my heart raced like a drumbeat in my chest. I packed my essentials, loaded my car, and prayed she wouldn't appear. Hours passed. No knock, no message. Relief began to creep in, but I couldn't relax completely. The paranoia had taken root. Weeks later, strange things started happening. My bank account showed charges I didn't make. My car, parked safely in the garage, had scratches and dents I couldn't explain. My phone buzzed late at night from unknown numbers. Once I glimpsed a familiar silhouette in the reflection of my window. Just a second too long. Samantha? I wasn't sure, but the fear was real. I tried to rebuild my life. New job, new friends, new routines. But shadows lingered. Every knock on the door, every honk outside my apartment made my pulse spike. I learned to sleep lightly, always with one eye open, always checking my phone for alerts. She had taught me a lesson I couldn't forget. Control doesn't always need violence. It can be subtle, persistent, and invisible. One night, months after I thought I had escaped, I received a plain envelope slid under my door. Inside, a single sentence written in her unmistakable handwriting. "You can leave, but you'll never be free." My chest tightened. I realized the truth. Samantha wasn't just an old friend. She was a shadow that followed, a nightmare disguised as nostalgia. And sometimes, the people you trust most are the ones who trap you the deepest. Even now, I live cautiously. I never forget, never relax fully. And sometimes, late at night, when a car idles outside my apartment or an unknown number buzzes on my phone, I swear I feel her presence watching, waiting, knowing that some friendships aren't meant to be rekindled. They're meant to haunt you forever. I never thought friendship could turn into a nightmare. I met Celine at 12 during detention after a prank gone wrong. She was fearless, chaotic, magnetic. I was cautious, quiet, observant. Somehow we clicked instantly. By high school, we were inseparable. She called me her sister. I called her my twin flame. We shared secrets, dreams, and fears nobody else understood. My parents adored her, though sometimes a flicker in her eyes made my stomach tighten. Questions about loyalty and betrayal I didn't know how to answer. I dismissed it as intensity. Years later, life dealt me a cruel hand. A neurological condition left me partially disabled. My wheelchair became more than a tool. It was independence, my freedom. Celine constantly hovered, calling herself my person, promising we'd face the world together. I trusted her completely. One evening, she appeared with her boyfriend, Jace. "We just need a place to stay," she said, casual, almost daring. I didn't hesitate. Weeks later, chaos arrived. A massive shepherd mix, untrained and hyperactive, bounded in. "She's family now," Celine said. The dog knocked me over, chewed furniture, urinated on my wheelchair. Celine shrugged. "Too sensitive." Trash piled up, drains clogged, bills unpaid. My apartment, once mine, became hostile. Shadows whispered at night, footsteps echoed in empty rooms. The nightmare had begun. I spent hours cleaning, avoiding the dog, trying to maintain my independence, but each day it got harder. Every creak, every shadow, every glance from Celine reminded me how easily she had invaded my life. I realized slowly, painfully, that the girl I had trusted most was slowly taking control over my home, my freedom, even my sanity. The nightmare wasn't just in objects or chaos. It was in her presence, always watching, always smiling, waiting for me to falter. By autumn, my apartment felt alive, hostile, unpredictable, suffocating. Items shifted, drawers left open, medications rearranged. The dog's eyes followed me constantly, intelligent, calculating. Once I glimpsed my reflection in a mirror, smiling when I wasn't. Celine's moods twisted violently. She accused me of spying, manipulating Jace, even turning her into the villain. Reasoning became impossible. One blackout night, shallow, deliberate breathing pressed against my bedroom door. The dog growled low, teeth bared, while something else lurked in the shadows. When the lights returned, sticky dark smears lined the doorframe. Controlling messages appeared subtly everywhere. "Sometimes you have to learn to depend on others. You've always been so proud." Jace vanished without explanation. The dog became her sentinel, patrolling hallways with terrifying precision. Sleep turned into vigilance. Every creak, every whisper, every shadow became a potential threat. I realized the person I had trusted, the one I called a sister, had begun consuming my life, bending reality to her whims. Nights grew suffocating, fear pressing down like a weight. Betrayal wasn't just chaos or unpaid bills, it was deliberate, psychological, and slow. Trash, dog urine, broken furniture, clogged drains. Celine laughed at my frustration, calling me too sensitive. The apartment pulsed with her presence. Every sound reminded me she was watching, waiting. I felt trapped in a place that once belonged to me, imprisoned in a nightmare I couldn't escape. The darkness wasn't just in the hallways, it was in her control, her obsession. Shadows seemed to whisper her commands. Even the dog acted like a tool, monitoring me, predicting my movements. I began counting steps, memorizing every noise, planning escape routes. But escape felt impossible and the terror grew daily, gnawing at the edges of my mind. I knew I had to escape before it was too late. I packed essentials, wallet, clothes, a few keepsakes, and rolled toward the front door, locked from the outside. Celine's voice floated from the kitchen, soft, coaxing. "You don't have to leave. You just need to stop fighting me." I grabbed my phone, tried calling 911. She snatched it, smashing it against the floor. The dog barked violently, teeth bared. Celine lunged at me. Adrenaline surged. I rammed my wheelchair forward, breaking free, racing to the back door. She stumbled, hitting the counter. A knife clattered. For a heartbeat, I glimpsed the girl I had once trusted. Then her eyes darkened like storm clouds. "You'll never get rid of me," she hissed. Shadows now seemed alive, stretching along the walls, moving independently. The whispers followed me, echoing threats I couldn't ignore. The dog patrolled hallways like a sentinel, guarding her every step. The betrayal wasn't only chaos, unpaid bills, or destruction. It was the erosion of my autonomy, my trust, my peace. Every step, every shadow reminded me she was present, patient, waiting. I realized the danger wasn't just physical anymore. Celine had invaded my life, manipulating reality itself, leaving me questioning everything. Sleep became impossible. Every sound could be her. Every shadow could conceal her. My home, once safe, had turned into a prison. Leaving wasn't a choice, and it was survival. Even as I planned escape, she left subtle traps everywhere, spilled liquids, furniture arranged to block paths, even shadows that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking. Every effort to leave became an ordeal. I began noticing minor inconsistencies, things moving slightly when I looked away, whispered commands in empty rooms. It was clear. She had calculated this meticulously, ensuring that even if I fled physically, the terror would follow me mentally. Finally, I ran, screaming, wheels clattering, adrenaline scorching every nerve. The apartment, once my sanctuary, was chaos incarnate. Bleach-stained floors, overturned furniture, trash and urine-soaked cushions scattered everywhere. Police arrived moments later, finding Celine and Jace gone, the dog locked in the bathroom growling at anyone who approached. Weeks later, Jace's abandoned car was found near a quarry, but Celine had vanished completely. I moved to a new city, changed my phone number, rebuilt my life. Yet sometimes late at night, faint knocks echo at my door. Slow, deliberate, patient. Shadows seem to linger at the edges of rooms. Fear never fully leaves. Every creak, every whisper reminds me. The person you called a sister can consume everything you are, your trust, your independence, your peace. They leave only the faint echo of betrayal, patient, waiting for the moment you let your guard down. Even now I double-lock doors, check windows twice, and sleep lightly, haunted by the memory of Celine's calculated presence. My home, my independence, my life, once invaded, left scars no time can fully erase. The betrayal taught me that some people wear the mask of a friend so well that you don't notice danger until it's too late. Shadows are quiet now, but I can feel them watching, waiting, reminding me that the nightmare could return at any moment. The experience reshaped me. I became cautious, observant, always aware of who I trusted. Friends are rare, trust is rare, but survival is everything. And the memory of Celine, her smile, her chaos, her control, remains as a chilling reminder that even the people closest to you can turn into the most terrifying nightmares imaginable. I hadn't heard from Daniel Cross in more than a decade when his name flashed across my phone one Tuesday night. It was one of those moments that stops you cold. His name looked strange there, like it didn't belong in the present anymore. Back in high school, Daniel and I had been inseparable, two kids from nowhere who swore we'd make something of ourselves. We shared everything: cheap pizza, bad grades, worse decisions. He was the reckless one, always pushing boundaries. I was the one trying to keep him out of trouble. But senior year, he got caught up with the wrong crowd. Older guys who dealt pills and liked to break into places for fun. After graduation, he disappeared. Rumors said he'd left town, maybe joined some construction crew in Tennessee, maybe prison. Nobody knew for sure. So when I got a text from an unknown number that simply read, "Eli, it's Dan. Need to see you. Important." My stomach sank. I stared at it for a long minute before replying. "Is this really you?" The answer came back almost instantly. "Yeah, been too long. Coffee? Tomorrow?" Against my better judgment, I said yes. We met at a diner just off the highway, the kind of place where the neon buzzes and the coffee tastes burnt no matter how much sugar you pour in. When I walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. Daniel had always been athletic, sunburned, alive. The man sitting in that booth was pale, almost gaunt. His eyes had dark circles like he hadn't slept properly in years, and his clothes hung loose, damp with rain. But when he saw me, he smiled. Same crooked grin, same flash of boyish mischief beneath the fatigue. "Eli," he said, voice rough. "Didn't think you'd actually come." We talked for a while, awkwardly at first, then easier as old memories surfaced. He asked about my job, my parents, whether I still played guitar. When I asked what he'd been doing, his answers were vague. "Work here and there," he said, "mostly traveling, trying to stay off the grid." There was something jittery in the way he kept glancing toward the window, like he expected someone or something to show up. After an hour, he leaned in close. "You ever dream about that night at the quarry?" he whispered. I froze. The quarry was where we used to hang out senior year. The last time I saw him, we'd gone there to light fireworks and something had gone wrong. A flash, a scream, a figure on the rocks we never talked about again. "Why?" I asked carefully. Daniel's lips trembled. "Because he's back." "Who?" He didn't answer, just scribbled an address on a napkin. "Come tonight, please, I'll explain everything." Before I could stop him, he was gone, out the door, swallowed by the drizzle. I should have ignored him. I told myself that a dozen times. But curiosity, or guilt, won. That night I drove out to Red Hollow Road, a stretch of cracked asphalt leading into the woods. The address Daniel gave me belonged to a weathered farmhouse half collapsed into itself. The porch sagged. The windows were boarded up from the inside. A single light glowed in one upstairs window. When I knocked, Daniel opened the door. His hands were shaking. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of wet wood. A single oil lamp sat on a crate beside a sleeping bag, surrounded by empty cans and notebooks covered in frantic scribbles. "Living off the land, huh?" I joked weakly. He didn't smile. "They can't track me here." "Who?" I asked again. Daniel looked at me like a man standing at the edge of a cliff. "The ones from the quarry. You remember the light?" Bits of memory flooded back. The way the sky had turned white for a split second, the static that made our radios buzz, the figure we'd seen crawling out from between the rocks. We'd convinced ourselves it was an illusion. A heat flare, maybe. "They weren't human, Eli," Daniel said quietly. "They followed me after that night. They whisper through walls, they feed on sound. If you listen too long, you can feel them inside your head." I stared at him. "Dan, you need help. Medical help." He shook his head violently. "You think I'm crazy? Stay here tonight, you'll see." I almost walked out. But something in his eyes, terror, not madness, kept me there. Around midnight, the house grew unnaturally still. Even the crickets went silent. Daniel turned off the lamp. "Don't move," he whispered. That's when the floorboards began to creak, slow, deliberate steps pacing just outside the window. The wood groaned. A faint static hummed in the air, crawling into my ears. I felt pressure behind my eyes like something invisible was watching us from the dark. Daniel clutched my arm. They found me again. Then came the whisper. Low, metallic, almost like a voice through an old radio. "We remember you, Daniel." The window pane flexed inward as if something pressed against it from outside. Daniel screamed and ran for the back door. I followed, tripping over debris, bursting into the cold night air. The forest was alive with movement, shadows shifting where no one stood. I swear I saw a figure made of light flicker between the trees before everything went black. I woke up at dawn, sprawled on the gravel road outside the farmhouse. My ears rang. My phone was dead. The house behind me was silent. Inside, everything was as before, except Daniel was gone. The lamp was shattered, his notebooks scattered. On the wall, scrawled in black marker, were the words, "If they find you too, don't answer." I went to the sheriff's office that morning. They searched the property for days but found nothing. No signs of struggle, no footprints, no Daniel. When I showed them the writing on the wall, they told me it must have been old graffiti. Nobody filed a missing person report. Daniel had no family left. His number stopped working. His Facebook account disappeared a week later. That was 3 years ago. Sometimes late at night, I wake to the faint crackle of static in my room. My radio turns on by itself, whispering words I can't quite catch. When I drive past Red Hollow Road, I see a pale light glowing deep in the trees. And once, just once, I swear I saw Daniel's reflection in my rearview mirror. He was sitting in the back seat, lips moving soundlessly. When I turned around, the seat was empty. There are some memories that refuse to fade no matter how many years pass. For me, it's a sunny afternoon from when I was 5. I'm a grown man now, with 2 kids of my own, yet each time I watch them walk through their school gates, a faint chill crawls up my spine. It's strange how something so small from childhood can shadow an entire lifetime. Back then, the world was simple: cartoons in the morning, scraped knees, and the joy of owning a fresh box of colored pens. I went to a modest little place called Ridgeview Elementary, a squat L-shaped brick building where the paint peeled and the swing chains squeaked. My best friend was Aaron, a wiry 6-year-old with grass-stained sneakers and a grin that dared trouble to catch him. If I was the cautious one, Aaron was all impulse. He was faster, braver, louder, always the first to jump off the monkey bars or sneak into the unused wing of the school. I admired him, even when he annoyed me. But that day, admiration took a backseat to anger. He'd taken my colored pens during math and was using them like they belonged to him. My 12-color pack, my treasure, now scattered across his desk as he doodled superheroes on his worksheet. When I whispered for him to stop, he just smirked and said, "They look better in my hands." I wanted to cry, but instead I made a quiet promise to myself. Payback would come during recess. The bell rang, releasing us into chaos. The playground exploded with laughter, sneakers slapping against the blacktop, jump ropes flicking in rhythm. Teachers chatted near the door, more focused on coffee than on us. I scanned the crowd until I spotted Aaron wandering toward the far corner of the building, the quiet side where the grass grew wild and old storage rooms gathered dust. I followed him, my anger pushing me forward. But as I rounded the corner, my steps faltered. Aaron wasn't alone. A beat-up blue sedan was idling by the edge of the lot, sunlight bouncing off its cracked windshield. The passenger door hung open, and inside sat a man I'd never seen before. His hair was greasy beneath a baseball cap, his smile too wide. He leaned across the seat holding out something shiny. Candy. "Hey, champ," the man called softly, his voice almost sing-song. "You like chocolate? I've got plenty. Come here and I'll give you a few." Aaron froze, curiosity flickering across his face. He took a tiny step forward, sneakers crunching the gravel. The man's hand beckoned again, and though I didn't yet understand what was wrong, something deep inside me told me this wasn't right. The man never left the car. He just kept gesturing for Aaron to come closer. "Come on," he coaxed. "Hop in quick before your teacher sees." I didn't think about danger or strangers. All I thought about was Aaron, about my pens, about getting even. So I did the most childish thing I could think of. I yelled, "Hey Aaron, Mrs. Turner's calling you. She said you're in big trouble for leaving the yard." Aaron spun around, his face twisting in irritation. "Shut up, Liam. You're just jealous." But before he could turn back, the car door slammed shut. Another figure, a man in the driver's seat I hadn't noticed, threw the gear into reverse. The sedan screeched backwards, spraying gravel, then sped away down the road. Aaron's mouth fell open. "You scared him off," he shouted, fists trembling. "He was going to give me cookies." I laughed, still proud of my petty victory. "Cry about it," I teased, sticking out my tongue. Aaron lunged at me, fury bubbling over. I shrieked and ran, my sneakers squealing against the blacktop. Before he could reach me, Mrs. Turner intercepted us, sunglasses slipping down her nose. "Enough," she barked. "What's going on here?" "He scared off the candy man," Aaron yelled. "He was going to give me cookies and Liam ruined it." For a second, Mrs. Turner just blinked, as if she hadn't heard him right. Then all the color drained from her face. "What did you say?" Aaron sniffled, pointing toward the parking lot. He had candy. He was nice. Mrs. Turner's whistle pierced the air, sharp enough to make every kid stop mid-game. "Everyone inside," she shouted. "Now, line up. Move." The crowd erupted in confused groans, but the tone of her voice silenced any protest. We shuffled back into the school, sneakers squeaking against the hallway tiles. She locked the doors behind us and pulled down the blinds, her hands shaking just a little. Then she crouched down so we could all see her face. "Listen to me," she said firmly. "If anyone you don't know ever talks to you, you do not go near them. You do not take candy. You find a teacher, understand?" A nervous murmur of yes rolled through the room. My stomach twisted, though I didn't know why. That night I heard my parents whispering on the phone, their voices low and worried. Something about police, about a blue car that had been seen near other schools. The next morning there was a meeting in the gym. Parents filled the bleachers, faces pale and serious. I remember my mom's hand clutching mine tight enough to hurt. From then on, Ridgeview Elementary had a security guard parked by the lot every day. That unused wing of the building was sealed shut, and we were never allowed to play near it again. At 5, I didn't grasp the weight of what had happened. To me, it was just another grown-up overreaction. But as the years slipped by, that day replayed itself in my mind, clearer each time. The way the man smiled, the way the car had sped off the moment I shouted, the second man behind the wheel. It took me years to understand that my childish outburst, born out of jealousy and anger, might have saved my friend's life. That Aaron had been a step away from disappearing into that car forever. Now, whenever I stand outside my kid's school, I catch myself glancing toward the parking lot. I watch the cars idling at pickup time, parents waving, engines rumbling, and for just a heartbeat, I see that old blue sedan again. And I think about how fragile safety really is. How one small decision, made by a 5-year-old with a grudge and a box of colored pens, changed everything.